Alright, today we're talking about Ditch Witch SK upgrades. This applies to everything pretty much from a SK750 or 752, 755, sk850, 800, 10 and 50, and it does overlap the 1550 a little bit. We're going to talk about some parts upgrades today. So just recently we upgraded from these single track rollers on the front and on the rear. If you're familiar with the Ditch Witches, they have 3 center bogies with 3 ribs, and they have a single rib and a single rib. Well, guess what? Just like everybody else, we kept throwing tracks. So I figured out the factory upgraded to this new roller with a recessed center, so it clears the sprocket. This is available from Ditch Witch. Just order for a SK1950 or anything that's a newer one. It fits right on there. Direct bolt on, 5 bolts, 5 lug nuts, you're on. Same thing with the front. If anybody has ever loaded one of these heavy on the bucket, trying to carry something or a big log if you're tree guys, and you notice how it makes a really hard clickety-clackety sound, rides rough, because it's riding right there. It's riding right down the center, and it's only riding, putting all your weight dead center. A standard 3 rib, which is the same as these, 1, 2, 3, this solves the problem. Much better stability when you are loaded all the way to the max. When you're heavy on it, we'll see how it lasts. I've only probably got about 20 hours, 30 hours on these so far, but I can tell you this, I split a track, and these are actually bobcat tracks. So I split a Ditch Witch track here last week, and while I was waiting for that to come in, I reused some MT85 bobcat tracks. This one and this completely chewed up one. These are what we used. Actually, that's the really bad one. So the one we actually used for about 20 hours after I put those rollers on, was waiting for new tracks, was this one. As you can tell, it's pretty bald. It's all chewed up on the inside. And those stayed on, even though they really shouldn't have. They stayed on once I put the 3 rib rollers on. So I would highly recommend, if you're having undercarriage issues or track issues, to go to those. These are Bobcat MT85 tracks, and these are phenomenal in the winter, so that's why I changed to those. I figured out the thread pitch, or the track pitch, and the sprocket and everything was about the same, so we were able to get them on there. One thing I will say, so mandatory upgrade if you have one of the early generations. So if you're looking at the back of the plate right here where you stand, here's your rubber cushion right there. That's the upgraded one. This right here is the factory one, the original first design. A bolt just goes through here and squishes this piece of rubber. Unfortunately, it turns into, it's squished down, your plate gets angled down like this. You always feel like you're falling off the machine. A simple order off a brand new SK1950 or any of the newer ones come with this one. I don't have a part number for you, but just look it up on Ditch Witch website or call your local Ditch Witch dealer. Definite worth it. I think it was only like 30-40 bucks. If yours looks like this, if it's smashed flat like mine was, and you feel like you're falling off the back of the machine, or even if you're just short or shorter and you really like to be up higher to see the controls more, we'll get to the controls in a second. I highly recommend getting that. Speaking of controls, I changed mine right away from the twin stick control to the joystick. It all comes down to operator preference. I can run either or, but if you're running this thing wide open, trying to hold on to it, reference yourself, and run both controls, even though I have big hands, it still is like riding a bucking bronco. This, you can just put right in here and move it around. It is worth its weight in gold. If you're used to running a Vermeer or a Bobcat or any of the other brands, this is the way to go. It's like 600 bucks. You can do it yourself. I did it myself. It took me about 3 hours. With that being said, I loved this control so much, and I really disliked the short, little bitty, stubby, it was green like this, control. And I figured out it was the same thread pitch, these two, so I just ordered another one of these, threaded it onto here. Now they match. Sorry, I'm OCD. It matches it feels perfect in your hand, especially if you have monster hands or whatever, that it fits. Definitely love that. I will say, one thing I did was change this exhaust. It was rotated. This is an SK850. The 850s had the exhaust coming out the hood. The only thing they changed on the 1050, they added the counterweight, which we'll get to, and then they put this on. This is angled towards, kind of towards the middle, and it just blows in your face. Angling it forward made all the difference. Although I will say, watch out on the end of it. If you're coming up to like a 1-ton dump or something, you can crinkle it. As you can see, it got crinkled at one time. We bent it back straight. Okay, Bradco adapter plate. This is a Bobcat bucket. Bradco makes the best adapter plate on the market. It's Bradco Paladin. It's like $700-800. It's worth its weight in gold. If you have a Bobcat MT or MT attachments, or even full-size attachments, and you want to run them, this thing is pretty much bulletproof. The handles are really smooth action. It just works. Great machine. I did have some problems with the ram, the seals in the ram, but I think it's just because of the age. It's got like 900 hours on it. Got that all sealed up. Hopefully it holds together. We did move this block up one bolt hole because it was contacting some of the taller Bobcat attachments like a grapple. So if you do have Bobcat grapples and you want to run it on here, they fit, they work. Just understand that Bobcats all run on the left side, just like the full-size machine. All the minis put the hydraulics on the passenger side, which is fine. You might need to get some hydraulic extensions made up at the local hydraulic shop. Also, with that being said, I ordered the weight kit for this that goes underneath the belly to make it an SK1950. And it's 4 large bolts. You can install it in the driveway. 2 of them are drilled, 2 of them are not on the 850. On the newer ones, you can add it to an SK1950 755, SK800, and obviously the 1050 comes with it. Supposedly you can add this to the SK1550 in addition to the weights that go up there, but I have not verified that, so I don't actually know that that's perfectly fit. That can fit on any of the other machines. They won't tell you it can, but it will add so much stability to your machine, it's not even funny. And that basically sums up the parts overview, whatever I've changed on this machine. We did shear a sprocket right off the motor, had to buy a whole new motor, and that's because we had the tracks so tight, trying to keep them on with that single rib pulley, that the only way they'd stay on is if you tightened them where they were very tight. And eventually enough rocks got in there, there was no room, and it just snapped them off. With these, you got the proper tension. You got 3 ribs front and rear. Every single roller's 3 ribs. They always like to derail between here and here, between the very last one and the second to the last one. Every ditch witch or Bobcat or Vermeer, that's where they love to throw tracks. The closer this distance is, the better, and the more ribs there are. I switched from Bobcat to Ditch Witch, and I could not be happier. Even though I've had some repairs, even though I've had to spend some money, I did buy a used machine, so I'm super ecstatic. This thing, the undercarriage, don't have to worry about grease like the Bobcat. That's a whole nother debacle. It runs the Bobcat attachments just perfect. Tons of power, 37 horse. I highly recommend these machines. Yeah. Can't think of any other upgrades we've done, but definitely look into getting the little rubber. All you got to do is get this cone shaped rubber. Here, I'll stand on it for you, and put that in. You might have to loosen up some of these bolts right here to get it in there, but it's definitely worth it. Oh, one more thing. So I'm not a huge fan of the tie down in the front. That's the one single tie down they give you under the arms. Very solid point, but just really annoying when you got to reach the chain through there every time. So we put a pair of D-rings, one on each side in the front. There's already one hole here. All we had to do was drill another. And then there's, from the factory, there's really nice ones in the back. But as far as Ditch Witch upgrades, that's what we've gotten so far. That's what we like. Super happy with the machine. Love the joystick. By the way, if anybody tells you that the joystick machines will not do zero turn, like a 180 or 360 degree turn on in one spot, they are completely wrong. They've never ridden one. We routinely do a 180 on a piece of plywood, either go on to it, turn 90 or 180. I could sit and do donuts on a piece of plywood all day and never touch the grass. So don't let them, if you really want a joystick and they say, hey, you got to get a twin stick to be able to do that, don't believe them for a second, because these machines are phenomenal with the joystick, especially if you're used to it. If you're used to Caterpillar controls on your skid steer, or I mean, this is just standard. All your drives are on the left, all your bucket on the right, and when they match like that, it's so much more ergonomic. Well, that's it for today's update on Ditch Witch SK machines. Hope you enjoyed. Hope this audio turns out good.